Hi, everyone. My name is Tracee Stanley. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited to be celebrating this 50th anniversary of Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye in partnership with Love as a Kind of Cure. This is a read along, as you know. I will be doing this read along, and then afterwards, I'll be sharing some very short reflections. So, thank you for joining me, and let's dive in together. The four of them moved away. Some of the other boys had come to the porch and were about to begin that partly hostile, partly indifferent, partly desperate mating dance. Suki, Jake, Darlene, and Choli walked through several backyards until they came to an open field. They ran across it and came to a dry riverbed lined with green. The object of the walk was a wild vineyard where muscadine grew. Too new, too tight to have much sugar, they were eaten anyway. None of them wanted, not then, the grape's easy relinquishing of all its dark juice. The restraint, the holding off, the promise of sweetness that had yet to unfold excited them more than full ripeness would have done. At last, their teeth were on edge, and the boys diverted themselves by pelting the girls with the grapes. Their slim black boy wrists made G-clefs in the air as they executed the tosses. The chase took Choli and Darlene away from the lip of the gully, and when they paused for breath, Jake and Suki were nowhere in sight. Darlene's white cotton dress was stained with juice. Her big blue hair bow had come undone, and the sundown breeze was picking it up and fluttering it around her head. They were out of breath and sank down in the green and purple grass on the edge of the pine woods. Choli lay on his back, panting, his mouth full of the taste of muscadine, listening to the pine needles rustling loudly in their anticipation of rain. The smell of promised rain, pine, and muscadine made him giddy. The sun had gone and pulled away its shreds of light. Turning his head to see where the moon was, Choli caught sight of Darlene in the moonlight behind him. She was huddled into a D, arms encircling drawn up knees on which she rested her head. Choli could see her bloomers and the muscles of her young thighs. "We bed get on back," he said. "Yeah." She stretched her legs flat on the ground and began to retie her hair ribbon. "Mama gonna whoop me." "No, she ain't." "Uh-uh. She told me she would if I get dirty." "You ain't dirty." "I am too. Look at that." She dropped her hands from the ribbon and smoothed out a place on her dress where the grape stains were heaviest. Choli felt sorry for her. It was just as much his fault. Suddenly, he realized that Aunt Jimmy was dead, for he missed the fear of being whipped. There was nobody to do it except Uncle O.V., and he was the bereaved too. "Let me," he said. He rose to his knees facing her and tried to tie her ribbon. Darlene put her hands under his open shirt and rubbed the damp, tight skin. When he looked at her in surprise, she stopped and laughed. He smiled and continued knotting the bow. She put her hands back under his shirt. "Hold still," he said. "How I gonna get this?" She tickled his ribs with her fingertips. He giggled and grabbed his rib cage. They were on top of each other in a moment. She corkscrewing her hands into his clothes, he returning the play, digging into the neck of her dress and then under her dress. When he got his hands in her bloomers, she suddenly stopped laughing and looked serious. Choli, frightened, was about to take his hand away, but she held his wrist so he couldn't move it. He examined her then with his fingers, and she kissed his face and mouth. Choli found her muscadine-lipped mouth distracting. Darlene released his head, shifted her body, and pulled down her pants. After some trouble with the buttons, Choli dropped his pants down to his knees. Their bodies began to make sense to him, and it was not difficult as he thought it would be. She moaned a little, but the excitement collecting inside him made him close his eyes and regard her moans as no more than pine sighs over his head. Just as he felt an explosion threaten, Darlene froze and cried out. He thought he had hurt her, but when he looked at her face, he was staring wildly at something over his shoulder. He jerked around. There stood two white men, one with a spirit lamp, the other with a flashlight. There was no mistake about their being white. He could smell it. Choli jumped, trying to kneel, stand, and get his pants up all in one motion. The men had long guns. He, 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 he. The snicker was a long, asthmatic cough. The other raced the flashlight all over Choli and Darlene. Get on with it, nigger, said the flashlight one. Sir, said Choli, trying to find a buttonhole. I said get on with it, and make it good, nigger, make it good. There was no place for Choli's eyes to go. They slid about furtively, searching for shelter while his body remained paralyzed. The flashlight man lifted his gun down from his shoulder, and Choli heard the clop of metal. He dropped back to his knees. Darlene had her head averted, her eyes staring out of the lamplight into the surrounding darkness and looking almost unconcerned, as though they had no part in the drama taking place around them. With a violence born of total helplessness, he pulled her dress up, lowered his shoulders and underwear. He. Darlene put her hands over her face as Choli began to simulate what had gone on before. He could do no more than make believe. The flashlight made a moon on his behind. He. Come on, coon, faster. You ain't doing nothing for her. He. Choli, moving faster, looked at Darlene. He hated her. He almost wished he could do it hard, long, and painfully. He hated her so much. The flashlight wormed its way into his guts and turned the sweet taste of muscadine into rotten, fetid bile. He stared at Darlene's hands covering her face in the moon and lamplight. They looked like baby claws. He. Some dogs howled. That's them, that's them. I know that's old Honey. Yep, said the spirit lamp. Come on. The flashlight turned away and one of them whistled to Honey. Wait, said the spirit lamp. The coon ain't come yet. Well, we have to come on his own time. Good luck, coon baby. They crushed the pine needles underfoot. Choli could hear them whistling for a long time. And then the dogs answered, no longer a howl, but warm, excited yelps of recognition. Choli raised himself in silence, buttoned his trousers. Darlene did not move. Choli wanted to strangle her, but instead he touched her leg with his foot. We got to get, girl. Come on. She reached for her underwear with her eyes closed and could not find them. The two of them padded about in the moonlight for the panties. When she found them, she put them on with the movements of an old woman. They walked away from the pine woods and toward the road. He in the front, she plopping along behind. It started to rain. That's good, Choli thought. It will explain away our clothes. When they got back to the house, some 10 or 12 guests were still there. Jake was gone. Suki too. Some people had gone back for more helpings of food, potato, pie, ribs. All were engrossed in early night reminiscence about dreams, figures, premonitions. They stuffed comfort was narcotic and had produced recollections and fabrications of hallucinations. Choli and Darlene's entrance produced a mild stir. Y'all soaked, ain't you? Darlene's mother was only vaguely fussy. She had eaten and drunk too much. Her shoes were under the chair, and the side snaps of her dress were open. Girl, come on in here. Thought I told you. Some of the guests thought they would wait for the rain to slacken. Others who had come in wagons thought they'd best leave now. Choli went into the little storeroom, which had been made into a bedroom for him. 3 infants were sleeping on his cot. He took off his rain and pine-soaked clothes and put on his coveralls. He didn't know where to go. Aunt Jimmy's room was out of the question, and Uncle Ovi and his wife would be using it later anyway. He took a quilt from the trunk, spread it on the floor, and lay down. Somebody was brewing coffee, and he had a sharp craving for it just before falling asleep. The next day was cleaning out day, settling accounts, distributing Aunt Jimmy's goods. Mouths were set in downward crescents, eyes veiled and feet tentative. Choli floated about aimlessly doing chores as he was told. All the glamour and warmth the adults had given him on the previous day were replaced by a sharpness that agreed with his mood. He could think only of the flashlight, the muscadines in Darlene's hands. And when he was not thinking of them, the vacancy in his head was like the space left by a newly pulled tooth, still conscious of the rottenness that once filled it. Afraid of running into Darlene, he would not go far from the house, but neither could he endure the atmosphere of his dead aunt's house. The picking through her things, the comments on the condition of her goods. Sullen, irritable, he cultivated his hatred of Darlene. Never did he once consider directing his hatred toward the hunters. Such an emotion would have destroyed him. They were big, white, armed men. He was small, black, helpless. His subconscious knew what his conscious mind did not guess, that hating them would have consumed him, burned him up like a piece of soft coal, leaving only flakes of ash and a question mark of smoke. He was in time to discover that hatred of white men, but not now. Not in impotence, but later, when the hatred could find sweet expression. For now, he hated the one who had created the situation, the one who bore witness to his failure, to his impotence, the one whom he had not been able to protect, to spare, to cover from the round moon glow of the flashlight, the he-he-he's. He recalled Darlene's dripping hair ribbon, flapping against her face as they walked back in silence in the rain. The loathing that galloped through him made him tremble. There was no one to talk to. Old Blue was too drunk too often these days to make sense. Besides, Choli doubted if he could reveal his shame to Blue. He would have to lie a little to tell Blue. Blue, the woman killer. It seemed to him that lonely was much better than alone. The day Chole's uncle was ready to leave, when everything was packed, the quarrels about who gets what had seethed down to a sticking gravy on everybody's tongue. Chole sat on the back porch waiting. It had occurred to him that Darlene might be pregnant. It was a wildly irrational, completely uninformed idea, but the fear it produced was complete enough. He had to get away. Never mind the fact that he was leaving that very day. A town or two away was not far enough, especially since he did not like or trust his uncle, and Darlene's mother could surely find him, and Uncle O.V. would turn him over to her. Chole knew it was wrong to run out on a pregnant girl, and recalled with sympathy that his father had done just that. Now he understood. He knew what he must do. Find his father. His father would understand. Aunt Jimmy said he had gone to Macon. With no more thought than a chick leaving its shell, he stepped off the porch. He had gotten a little way when he remembered the treasure. Aunt Jimmy had left something, and he had forgotten all about it. In a stove flue no longer used, she had hidden a little meal bag which she called her treasure. He slipped into the house and found the room empty. Digging into the flue, he encountered webs and soot, and then the soft bag. He sorted the money. 14 $1 bills, 2 $2 bills, and lots of silver change. $23 in all. Surely that would be enough to get to Macon. What a good, strong-sounding word, Macon. Running away from home for a Georgia black boy was not a great problem. You just sneaked away and started walking. When night came, you slept in a barn if there were no dogs, a cane field, or an empty sawmill. You ate from the ground and bought root beer and licorice in the little country stores. There was always an easy tale of woe to tell inquiring black adults, and whites didn't care unless they were looking for sport. When he was several days away, he could go to the back door of nice houses and tell the black cook or the white mistress that he wanted a job weeding, plowing, picking, cleaning, and that he lived nearby. A week or more there, and he could take off. He lived this way through the turn of the summer, and only the following October did he reach a town big enough to have a regular bus station. Dry-mouthed with excitement and apprehension, he went to the colored side of the counter to buy his ticket. How much to Macon, sir? $11, 55 for children under 12. Chole had $12.04. How old you be? Just on 12, sir, but my mama only give me $10. You just about the biggest 12 I ever seed. Please, sir, I gotta get to Macon. My mama's sick. Thought you said your mama give you $10. That's my play mama. My real mama is in Macon, sir. I reckon I knows a lying nigger when I see one, but just in case you ain't, just in case one of them mammies is really dying and wants to see her little old smoke before she meets her maker, I gon' do it. Chole heard nothing. The insults were part of the nuisances of life, like lice. He was happier than he had ever remembered being, except that time with Blue and the watermelon. The bus wasn't leaving for 4 hours, and the minutes of those hours struggled like gnats on flypaper. Dying slow, exhausted with the fight to stay alive, Chole was afraid to stir, even to relieve himself. The bus might leave while he was gone. Finally, rigid with constipation, he boarded the bus to Macon. He found a window seat in the back all to himself, and all of Georgia slid before his eyes. until the sun shrugged out of sight. Even in the dark, he hungered to see, and only after the fiercest fight to keep his eyes open did he fall asleep. When he awoke, it was very well into the day, and a fat black lady was nudging him with a biscuit gashed with cold bacon. With the taste of bacon still in his teeth, they sidled into Macon. Well, the words that I would offer my inner girl, my inner child today is really to go inward and understand the source of true beauty, of true wisdom, of true self-knowledge. To cultivate the tools that lead to discernment and true seeing. To see the pain in others. To maybe be able to learn how that pain from others is projected onto us. And 2020 has been a year and is a year of multiple pandemics. It's a year of a lot of transition. And as with any transition, there is power in transition if we pause and notice what's happening in the transition. And so the question that I would ask myself in this transition is, what kind of seeds am I planting? Am I planting seeds of hope, seeds of love, seeds of understanding and compassion? Or am I planting seeds of despair and hatred? What am I tending to? What seeds am I tending to? Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for being here on this read along.
Tonight, that we, people, will get